Good morning and welcome to week 6, and we're almost at the finish line. Today I'd like to go over the case study that we had this past week about Raven, and then go into what is expected for week 6. So some of my thoughts about the case study that we had were that this case was unique in the sense that Amber or Raven was sustained by the macro here. Her micro and meso were very unstable, and as her mother kept moving from place to place, she gravitated towards institutions. She gravitated towards school, and even through her abuse, she managed to keep up her grades. So the institution here was the stabilizing factor in her life, and also she chose to graduate from college, again moving towards the only stable influence that she knew, and she had had some success in that area. So here, in the past cases, the system had failed the individuals, but I think in this case, the system did protect her to some extent. Of course, since the perpetrator was not pursued once he left the state, in that sense the system did fail her. However, it also nurtured her. So I thought that was a departure from our previous cases. What is also interesting to me is that the mom had her for a number of years before the abuser entered their life and the abuse was discovered. So she had a really good foundation to build upon, and a lot of her strengths, her resiliency, her creativity, her sense of humor, it all came from those initial foundation years where she was able to grow up without any kind of threat. And so going back to how the brain is formed, it is formed from the bottom up. So she had a really good foundation which she built upon as she became an adult. So those were just some of my thoughts on the case. And here's week 6. So one of the things that we have to do in week 6 is post the journal that was due in week 5. So here, don't forget, your week 5 journal is due by Sunday of week 6. And you have to go back to week 5 to submit it. Now, the discussion this week is about Antoine Fisher. A good movie, but I have to give you a heads up, if you haven't seen it before, it can be a little difficult to watch in certain places. And again, here, let me get into what is expected. This week's discussion is going to be different in the sense that you do not have to respond to others' posts. Let me get it in here. These are the prompts that you will be answering. So what occurs that engages Antoine in the therapy? If you have seen the movie, you do know that he is a little resistant at first. And what changes for him? This is a very interesting question, and I would pay attention to the interaction between him and the therapist. How does he change? And we can now understand what changes took place in his brain, or what part of the brain did he start engaging more, and as a result, how did he change? And this is a good one, and we're going to talk a little bit about countertransference. How does the therapist view himself in this interaction? And according to me, he is heavily involved in this young man's life. And he comes in, and towards the end of the movie, the therapist does explain why, and he does explain, he acknowledges how Antoine has changed him. And that's really the truth in any therapeutic interaction the therapist as well as the individual that they're seeing, both will change as a result. Okay, so what changes in his therapist? And then what does he need to reintegrate into the culture, society after trauma therapy? And the answer is very clear. The therapist really spells it out. But what I'm interested in knowing is, why does that need to happen? Like, what is the therapist thinking behind suggesting what he does? And then we have consolidation of his gains. Okay, what does Antoine need to trust people outside of the therapeutic relationship? Now, this is a child of abuse, literally from the day he was born. So trust, I wouldn't say doesn't come easily. I would say doesn't come at all. So what are a couple of things that he needs to do, or he needs in order to start the process of trusting people? Okay, and the last one is also very interesting. Did you have any concerns regarding the therapist's behavior? Do you think the therapist violated certain boundaries? Do you agree with it? Don't agree with it? So it's going to be an interesting discussion. So here is the rubric. You have to post a discussion by the initial deadline. It will answer all requested questions and or topics. So I would suggest that you make headings for each one of them, so that it's easy for you to keep track of what you answered and what you didn't, and also makes for an organized paper and easy to read and grade. So if you could just have a heading for each of the 6 questions and write down your thoughts on them. So I have already posted this, I have opened this, and the reason for this is you will not be able to see anyone else's prompts till you post your own. Okay, and so in this discussion you are encouraged to respond to your peers, but you're not required to do so. So that's another change from the previous discussions. Going back to the readings, let me do that. Okay, so you have the sanctuary model. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but not as much about the readings that we're going to go through. So here we are. I really liked this PowerPoint because it talks about an organization as an individual. And this is something that we don't even realize. But organizations, like individuals, can be traumatized. And the result can be as devastating for organizations as it is for individuals. So essentially, as social workers, we are going to get into a field which deals with some of the toughest situations that life has to offer. And this is a very unique way of looking at vicarious traumatization, and offers some suggestions as to what we should be on the lookout for, what we can prevent, what's within our control, not within our control. So it talks about being chronically hyper-aroused and losing the capacity to manage emotions. So whatever happens in an individual also happens in an organization. So people may be very reactive, people may lose empathy, and the entire environment may become progressively violent and unjust. Leaders become more authoritarian and punitive because you want to control everything. And so these are some of the red flags that go up, which tell you that this organization is traumatized now. And maybe some of you may recognize that in your organizations. And it also talks about how to self-care. here it talks about vicarious traumatization, and the symptoms can be similar to those of PTSD, and then what you can do about it. Now, here's the main one. Workers may develop difficulty extending empathy to their clients. And this is what we know as burnout. We've seen the same thing over and over again, so you kind of lose the sensitivity. So it's an excellent PowerPoint, and talks about, what should an organization look like. This is something that really stood out for me. Hurt people hurt people. And sometimes, even if you don't have a history of trauma, but you work in a traumatized organization, you may pick up the distress of the people you're serving and end up becoming traumatized yourself, and this will impact the services that you have to offer. So it's a thought-provoking discussion. And then we have Van der Kolk and Rothschild as well. So I look forward to your responses, and like I said, we're on the home stretch now. So thank you.